I just saw also Matt.
Oh, I mean, can you look? I have the t-shirt.
Definitely.
Is this still from that time?
Yes. I think I had one in one of the boxes here.
Oh, yeah, maybe you did. Oh, we should have,
I could have rescheduled that now.
Yeah, I just don't know when.
I did have more stuff. We'll put them in that.
With books,
Oh, you did?
curating data books and.
Well, I just picked up some from Customer. I think maybe I have enough of it. Just put one in after it's done. So I did a t-shirt. Otherwise, I would not.
No, I just ended up.
Waiting.
Sorry. So what do you want to do? I'm in shopping.
Well,
Yeah.
It's
There were other ones. There was this big documentary book. So I've got another copy of it somewhere anyway. So it doesn't matter. You know what it is when you store things for a long time. You actually don't need any of it. It's a good way of getting rid of stuff.
maybe another. Yeah.
Aha.
People are so good at keeping their own things. Yeah. Hi. Hello.
It was interesting because they were so good.
There's several t-shirts around.
Because I got.
Several t-shirts.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
I know.
Trying to get rid of.
Did you hear this?
But then they check me, but I don't.
I don't know where it's from.
Mine's been stolen.
Except we have from people who have before born. Like that's how it is. It's like next. Yeah, exactly. But it's like that. More often than
John Saffron's.
Yeah.
Talking of books, do you still have copies of the American one? Yeah, you do.
The one I did.
Yeah.
Barely. I might have.
Yeah, because there were a few extra in I picked that.
So it's actually 4 now.
Since
In 1 minute time begin.
Jakob will bring some copies along tomorrow.
Really?
Yes, yes. He's got
Because there was quite a few, because there was.
Oh, yeah. He does have some. You should bring them. We said he'd bring.
We try and arrange some kind of like informal site.
Could we be? Are you ready?
Yes, we look.
In formal giveaways on even.
Der står ikke nogen med pappen står her også. Vi kan også stå.
Så bring them.
Det går ind fra.
Did you see Alpha?
Nu er min computer opdateret. Skal den have det nu? The Christian shop is like that also.
Not the goodies.
So nice.
Obviously racist.
Jakob is very pretty. I have spare copies of yours.
Don't you at the moment?
Yeah, it's red gray, I think they are not.
Nice, thank you. Okay, it's 4 o'clock. Got a tough schedule. So we start.
Yeah.
Okay. First, I should say that we are recording this Zoom session, so hope you don't mind. And after this, I'll say welcome. Welcome to the celebration of 21 years and a few months of README 2004 Software Art Festival, which we celebrate now because A, we didn't get around to doing it last year, and B, we now have around 40 video clips of the artist presentations of the festival. That's digitized by Marcus Bjerremann, who's sitting at the end of the table down there, who did a tremendous job. Who did it? The original video. The festival was organized originally by the RunMe team, Amy Alexander, Olga Goranova, and Alexei Shulgin, the Dogbot team, Saul Albert, Alex McLean, and Douglas Irvin Repetto. And then the Aarhus team, where there's too many names, but people from the Digital Aesthetics Research Center at Aarhus University, and the Jutland Art Academy. And what was the agenda at that time? We wrote a long list here at the website, and as you can see, one of the things we wrote is that the art movement, known under the name software art, has been active for a few years. It's our belief that there is a sufficient body of thinking in this and neighboring areas being carried out, which needs a platform for uncovering and enrichment. Software art is a practice that regards software as a cultural phenomenon that defines one of the principal domains of our existence today. So that was quite futuristic. And what we did also is this poster that you can see here, and the book. And we still got a few books. And then the T-shirts that yeah. And I can see several people actually has saved the T-shirts. Yeah. So on to Christian.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing. Yeah, it's fantastic to see everyone after such a long time. Many of you I haven't seen for years. It's really nice seeing you. I'll just say a few words on the agenda of what's going to happen today. Søren and I are going to give an introduction. I think we'll ramble on for 10 minutes or so. And but also I'd like to say a few words about sort of what led us to this. I think about in the spring sometime, Olga, Alex, McLean, Søren, and myself, we decided to make sort of an official launch of this archive. It's been archived, as Søren said, but we wanted to make it sort of more official that it was online. So Alex put all the videos online, and then we tried to find everybody's emails from back then, and it was a sort of an archival work to find everyone. And I think we managed to find at least like 90% of people's emails. So it was sort of like 80 or 90 people we wrote, I think, of people who were involved either in the organization or spoke at the conference part here at the university, or were taking part at the art academy in the RunMe Dogbot City Camp. And then we asked them, or you, many of you here today, to relate to 4 questions. What do you think about the projects you presented? How do you look at README, software art, and that period of time today? How, if at all, did it influence your work? And how do we interpret and reinterpret it for our current situation? So the plan is today, sort of keeping in the spirit of the city camp, is that each person has a limited 5 minutes to present. We're many people online and here in the room in Aarhus, so there's unfortunately not much time for conversation. So instead we made a pad, and I think you've all received a link to the Etherpad. And so please feel free to comment or share notes, or just say hi to people, or as you please. Use the pad as you please. And in there you'll also find the list of speakers, so you can see when you are up next or who is speaking. And to everyone else who's not speaking, I don't need to say this, but please turn off your microphones. Where are we today, you and me, Søren?
Yeah, when we did this, the README RunMe, it was a quite overwhelming experience. I think we were around 100 people that came to Aarhus from all over the world. With buses and trains and some planes. We had live coding, strange art, exhibited, concert with printers, and academic talks. And we figured out that yes, software art and culture exists we weren't just dreaming, but we actually had a place, we had a community. And many years later, it was also recognized by, HCI, and even in Copenhagen, they discovered that after 10 years or so. We discovered and were part of a way of working with art, artistic, and cultural practices that has been defining for us, and also for the environment here in Aarhus in DARK ever since. And it also gave us a network. We went to Transmediale the year after, and we suddenly knew a lot of people, which was quite a new situation for us. We felt quite alone before that. And these and of course this network and you all are many of the people we've collaborated with, been invited by, and has written about and with ever since in various articles and in our book, The Meta Interface.
Yeah, and Søren and I have often discussed in the past 20 years how poorly organized we are as a group of academics and researchers in the broad field of sort of people studying and doing strange things with software. And that's despite the fact that many of the people who were at the event back then and already were immersed in, or have been since then immersed in academic institutions. Actually, we only randomly meet at festivals like Transmediale or seminars, and there's not like a real annual reoccurring software studies conference, and there's never been an organization for people doing strange things with software. We often discuss that, and we are both at a department of digital design and information studies at Aarhus University, where we have many colleagues in STS, and there they've formed like a very strong organization for researchers who do social science and technology. We also have neighboring fields who deal more with sort of the relation between art and technology. And there's, for instance, the Electronic Literature Organization with annual meetings and journals and so on. But we don't have that. And it seems as if what we represented back then was more of an attitude, an approach to software and software culture than a sort of delineated academic field. And maybe there's also a contradiction in making an organization for people who profoundly believe in decentralization and the value of institutional critique. But despite this, we have always sought to experiment with and rethink what an academic organization is, how to form relations and share resources across institutions, and also with practitioners outside the academic institutions in the spirit of what we did back then. For instance, we have, and I point here at Jeff Cox and I have for many years been organizing yearly research seminars in the context of Transmediale, trying to open up the festival to new faces and also let new into a network. What am I myself doing today? I just published, I do the advertisement. I just published a small book with Pablo, who's also here, and Nicolas Malevin on AI, and it's a tour guide to autonomous AI imaging. Many of you know the standard platforms, but what do people who do not want to use the sort of commercial standard platforms, what do they do? What kind of culture do they come from? What are the material infrastructures and interfaces that support this kind of practice? That's what it's about. It's available online. I'm also working on another book project with Jeff around collective infrastructures for publishing, and I'm also have a fellowship at Aarhus Institute of Advanced Studies to do a third book, which is on all of this and the sort of limits of computing and how we from within computing can establish limits and the cultures that try to do that. So Søren, what are you doing?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, I'm part of, we just launched a research project that's called Human AI Collaboration Imaginaries Interventions Interfaces, which is also looking into artistic ways of using generative AI, and we also have an artistic PhD. And then I'm also doing a book writing a book about the relationship between generative AI and, well, interfaces as usual. So now I'm gonna show the trailer to our archive of films, which has also been edited by Marcus. So let me see. Yeah, you see it, right?
This project WIMP is about, actually it's about screwing up Windows operating system on the level of its interface. So we're also thinking about other interfaces to this thing. One of the future development paths is to arrange video feedback, so it's going to be operated through video webcam, where you have to move around.
Basically, it is a dictionary.
So this is the idea of the DreamLog. So DreamLog belongs to a more general idea, which is to understand how this global text is structured, what is this topology. I start downloading all the pages that contain these little sentences. I mean, so the final aim of this is really to be something like Google, but non-local.
I love the sloppy transformation of the digital signals into audio and perfect programming, all these ones and zeros going into this, like, what called your disaster zone, where it's going, through this poorly engineered, print head driver that clanks and, it's not very accurate and screws up. And
Yeah, so while you're playing, you can not only advance, but also go back. Make some scratch.
Потому что, возможно, будет таким убийственно дешевым хардварным решением для диджеев.
Yeah, so he wants to promote this thing as a cheap hardware solution for VJs.
So that was the introduction from Søren and me. And now we have the stream of speakers.
Yeah. So I'm going to speak on behalf of False Loco. Hello, everyone. It's so joyous to see you all. I feel incredibly happy. And I'm going to read this on behalf of Paul Slocum, who is a small kid and can't be here, but he sent his little text. So he writes, I'm a digital artist, curator, and conservator who lives in Pasadena, California, and I run a small gallery called &or Gallery. I think I can say without exaggeration that README 04 was the most influential and transformative event in my entire art career. I had an interest in digital art since I was a child, but I didn't realize there was a community and outlet for that until later in life. And README was my first deep exposure to that world. I was blown away by the creativity and thoughtfulness of the event. I still remember a lot of the presentations and performances vividly. Inspired by README and a few other experiences in Europe, I opened a small digital art gallery in Texas 2 years after that, which is still operating today. Over the years, I worked with various README 04 participants at the gallery and in other projects. I loved the wide range of projects that were presented at README, and the way the conference was organized seemed very efficient. Everything artists needed, but nothing wasted. I think that a lot of the digital art world these days has become more corporate and bloated, and there are not many organizations or events that still feel so personal and genuine like README. I think there's definitely a place for something like it today, and I'm still trying to recreate the magic of README at my gallery space in California. Thank you so much for including me in such a wonderful event. This is very sweet. So the next one up is Troels, right?
Troels.
Yeah.
Oh. Can you hear me? Should I add? Should I?
No.
No, but then we have a reverb, so
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just try to speak up.
yeah.
Yeah. So I would just say, first of all, thank you for inviting us all and for finding us. It was very touching, actually. And it's nice to be back. Wasn't the conference actually held in this building? So
Just up the.
Many
Anyway,
places.
I had a very good time at that particular conference and the exhibitions and so on, and think back on the whole project with great, warm feelings, and it was very inspiring. Having said that, I'm not. I've never really been part of the artistic environment here, and I've only joined you as a kind of a reader. I wasn't very active in the environment beyond this conference, and so I've been trying to read up on what you've been doing, because I've not been a contributor much since then. I'm working on an ongoing project on Danish art collective Superflex, and then I'm doing a consultancy for University of Copenhagen at the wonderful Department for Arts and Cultural Studies, helping my fellow researchers to do good research applications. But when I look back on the book and my own presentation, also I was asked, I think, to evaluate what do you think about the project that I wrote about. I think that I was happy with the work, I would say, and especially happy with Florian Kramer's work that I was criticizing. I thought it was a beautiful piece, so really, really interesting to criticize, actually, as a kind of what is the future, what is the nature of software art, and what is the future of software art. But I must also say that the urgency of the whole project is even more relevant today than back then. When you think of it, that being able to be critical in the world sort of media landscape we have today is it's an entirely different ballgame, of course, but something that really was thought-provoking when I read through the book. It's not that I have much more to say about this, but I would be happy to continue in the environment if it's relevant, and just express my gratitude and encourage you to continue. So I thought the premise was actually that everybody should say something, so I was quick to say yes.
Thank you. Shall I now go? Yeah?
Yeah.
It's my turn. Right. So I'm going to change what I prepared, although maybe it's a bit of a downer. So fair enough. Because I've been preparing, I was thinking about the relationship between art and politics, and in relation to the horizon of possibility, really, of imagination, and thinking about what we imagined was possible at that time and what was needed to do in art and culture back then and now. And the first Dreamy Festival we co-organized with Alexei Shulgin, and
You're muted, Olga.
We can't hear Olga.
Yeah, you're muted, Olga.
Then we have to get this working again.
shall I keep speaking? At what point was I cut off?
They're saying yes, thumbs up on screen.
But when did I stop? Okay, anyway. So, as is widely known, net art and digital art of the 90s was fueled by the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the dissolution of the Eastern Bloc. There was a lot of discussion of East and West, and those terms were widely used back then, and then not used for like 20 years until recently, where you now have again a collective West and new geopolitical blocs defined by hot and cold conflicts and wars, and we are in a very different political situation. So we organized then with Alexei Shulgin the second festival in Helsinki, and then with Søren and Christian and Alex and Saul and people from Dortmund, from Dortbot and from Aarhus, the third one, and then the last one in Dortmund with Inke, who's here. And you know, Russian, Ukrainian, and Belarusian artists traveled to these events, and we had artists from Indonesia and other places across the globe. And here now we only have Western Europeans, or like the people from the US, or people who live in the West. So of course the divisions are not only, you know, geopolitical; they could be institutional, financial, personal, you know, differentials of infrastructures. Oops, that's my own alarm. That's not for me. But what does it mean that we have like such a narrow representation of what we did back then? It is a narrowing. It's not exactly like, you know, the diversity that we had. So the discussions in the public sphere today, you know, about the collapse of neoliberalism as a model. Neoliberalism advocated for open societies, and Soros had a role to play in supporting digital arts in Eastern Europe, Russia, Kazakhstan, Moldova, and etc. But because liberalism and neoliberalism are colonial forms of power, there's also a critique or a view, or a certain kind of view, that all alone, net art and software art and culture and all our experimentation with RunMe, software art platform, you know, art platforms before social media, was somehow just an expression of the kind of new phase of neoliberal power and control, which encourages the freedom and experiment and openness to then harvest it. So there's this view, I think it's quite powerful, that somehow what we did back then in this doesn't only evolves into and kind of is not only captured, but somehow developed methods for or structures that facilitate in this dispossession by big capital that came later. And our logic of anarchic organization, you know, that was the RunMe Dortbot City Camp, against hierarchies, against adulation of authorship, against winners, against the banking model of art or culture development, against self-aggrandizing, communal horizontal organization and multiplicity of genres and forms, and where things came from. All this is somehow kind of often presented as part of new forms of power and capitalism. And what I want to finally say is that I think that these ideas are unsatisfactory and dangerous and should be abandoned. There are limited ways of looking back because the unfolding of what becomes our reality is always through struggle, all the way through, which means a possibility for things going in different ways and different directions. And which also means that we don't only need new narratives about art we did 20 years ago in a different historical conjuncture, but also that we need new art and new forms of art for the current new historical moment. Papa.
Somehow this went offline.
Okay, but we can keep going. But we won't hear people.
I think I'm next, aren't I?
You're next.
Yes.
So
I believe I'm next, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can continue.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got it on. Here again,
so turn my sound off.
No, maybe you do your sound.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Use your sound.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here again. And I'm not sure I'm answering the brief, actually, but I'll go ahead anyway. Some reflections on the changes since 2004 in 5 minutes. That's quite a task. My contribution to README was a paper, co-authored paper with Alex McLean and Adrian Ward, Coding Praxis, reconsidering the aesthetics of code. And this was an attempt to address the false separation of aesthetics and politics, if you like. We argued that the formative process of writing and executing code can reveal ideologies embedded within computational systems. That seems obvious now, but maybe it wasn't so much then, to us at least. In this sense, coding could be seen as a form of critical praxis, we said, a way to question how it is inherently social and performative, both producing and reflecting relations of power. It was a response to an earlier text that, again, was written with Alex and Adrian from 2001, called The Aesthetics of Generative Code, such a long time ago. It's really incredible to think. And this was... And it was really responding to some critical comments that had been made at the time, or shortly after its publication, by Florian Kramer, that our focus on aesthetics came at the expense of an emphasis on social context. We thought that was completely mistaken. In fact, Florian thought it was mistaken as well, eventually. But, and I mean, some similar ideas we tried to express in other ways. There was a co-curated exhibition called Generator in 2002. And this brought together instruction-based artworks in a conceptual tradition, such as works by Sol LeWitt, Yoko Ono, with some of these software art practices of people like Alex McLean, Adrian Ward, others. Actually, Cornelia Solfrank's NetArt Generator was part of this as well. And the common interest, put simply, I suppose, that was code or high-level programming languages, were as much linguistic as mathematical, indeed speech-like, performative, as I've mentioned. We were interested in things like Perl poetry, live coding, these kind of practices. We highlighted the potential for code to become a site of aesthetic and political experimentation or expression. The line of argument has remained pretty consistent since 2004 and shortly before. In aesthetic programming, written with Winnie Soon in 2021, it's a book which is about learning to code, but this is treated as a means to understand code from the insides, how it expresses particular worldviews, particularly those around class, gender, race, the way these kind of conceptions of this are reproduced. So this brings us to today and what's changed, to a situation where we might again question how or what to read and write and execute, and as access to source code has become much more challenging and is no longer particularly revealing when it comes to something like generative AI. So some commonly recognized problems related to the situation now, and everyone's focus, it seems, on AI and generative AI in particular. So if I take an example like ChatGPT, it steals and it's trained on various people's intellectual labor and profits from this without financial compensation to those who produce the work. There's nothing wrong with theft, don't get me wrong, but it depends on who steals from whom. Concerns over quality of learning, if universities go along with the flow and outsource to big tech. I mean, that's certainly the case in the university I work for. Ecological concerns, of course, over the energy required to service these technologies and resource extraction more widely that follows a colonial logic. OpenAI is one example of many, has several well-documented military ties, as does Microsoft, etc., etc. AI software needs a lot of data and labor outsourced to the global south, and there's plenty of evidence of human rights abuses connected to this. In addition, advanced technologies become entangled with far-right ideology, techno-libertarian and Christian fundamentalism. What was once secular, or at most a faith in technology and capitalism, has evolved into a divine belief in ordained hierarchy. In the far-right imaginary, technology is no longer just a product of human ingenuity and imagination, but an instrument of divine intervention and naturalized distribution of power. What we can take from this is that the class enemy is clearer than ever and has something to do with software. 5 minutes?
Power, right?
Hello. Yeah, can I get? Okay, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Okay, I need to turn my sound on.
Yeah.
Sorry? Yes. Okay, no, so happy to be here and to see all of you 20 years after. I still wearing my t-shirt. I have to say that probably it fits me without too much stretching, so that's a good sign. Let me say some words about the questions that I've tried to answer. Okay. First, reading our text from 2004 feels like opening a time capsule. There was a palpable energy, a sense that we were uncovering something vital and hidden. We were digging into the ontology of the computer at a time when most of the world was still marveling at the screen. We spoke of software not as a tool, but as a cultural force. We argued that algorithms structure thought, that code is politics, that art could be a mode of critical software practice. Back then, this felt like a specialist argument. Today is a headline. So what we got right, the prophetic core, let's say. Our central thesis has been vindicated beyond the wildest expectation. Let's look back at what we planned. For example, we saw the black box. When we critiqued the non-transparency of code, we were pointing at what we now call the black box of AI. Our early worries about Google's PageRank have exploded into global debates on algorithm bias, filter bubbles, and content moderation. Then we championed process. Our insistence that in software art, the process is the artwork prefigured today's obsession with neural network training, data sets, and the workflow. We were already looking behind the image into the generative system. Third, we politicize the interface. We question the Office metaphor and the graphical user interface as a natural given. Today, that critique has expanded to the feed, the smart city, or the voice assistant. The interface is no longer a window on a screen, it's the very architecture of our daily lives. The software art we championed was, in essence, a pioneer form of what is now called critical technical practice. We were the early warning system, let's say. So what changed? The ground shift beneath our feet. What changed? The ground shift beneath our feet. But the world didn't just confirm our ideas, it just complicated them. So first, from code to models. Our battlefield was source code. Today, it's often trained models, opaque structures where the logic is emergent, not written. The algorithm is no longer just a finite list of instructions. It's a statistical landscape. Second, from subculture to infrastructure. Software didn't just surrounded us. It's subsumed us. The playful tactical media tools we imagined have been drowned by planetary scale computation run by a handful of corporations. The read-me culture collided with the scale-me economy. So the mainstream, third, the mainstreaming and of critique. As Florian Kramer warned us about confusing aesthetics with poiesis. Today, corporate AI sell us creativity as just another API call. Aesthetics without critique. Poiesis without politics. The beauty of the code has been commodified into an user interface effect. So last point, reinterpretation for now, our unfinished project. No. So where does this leave our project? It doesn't make it obsolete. It makes it more urgent than ever. Our task is no longer just to read me or run me, but to audit me, govern me, and reimagine me. Let's say we must apply the spirit of software art, the critical hands-on world-making spirit, to the new terrains. One, to dataset curation, treating training data as a cultural artifact full of bias and worldviews, as everybody's doing right now. Then, second, to model interpretability, using artistic practice to visualize and critique the logic of AI, as is being done. Third, to algorithm liturgy, designing rituals and interactions that resist the addictive attention-extracting patterns of platform software. So in 2004, we asked, what is the essence hidden inside the software? In 2025, the question is even sharper. How do we reclaim the agency to shape the algorithm systems that are now shaping us? So we started this conversation. We have the vocabulary, the history, and the critical spirit. The black boxes have multiplied, but so have our tools to open them. Let's not just look back at our time capsule. Let's use it as a compass for what comes next. Thanks a lot.
No. There is a mic.
But next one is Christoph.
So next one is Christoph.
Is it me?
Oh yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me or not?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If that's okay with you. Can you see?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here or there, because README was one of the very first international events where I was invited to show my work, and I was barely an artist at that time. And so what was new for me was that for the first time, people didn't treat me like some alien geek, And but maybe that was because we were all alien geeks. You never know exactly. So when I prepared this speech, I thought of my favorite comic book artist. I don't know if it's been translated in outside France, but it's Marcel Gottlieb. And the first one is about the ugly duckling. And when you are an alien geek or an ugly duckling and you try to become an artist, you never know if 20 years later you will turn into a beautiful swan, or if you will turn into an ugly swan, as in the book. Or maybe that's also because the entire community or the whole world has been turned into a bunch of ugly ducklings, and you're the last human on Earth who knows? So I have a, so that's my favorite, really my favorite picture about Pinochenstein, still Gottlieb, about software, right? Because clearly we cannot decompile ourselves into some readable source code, and such as a plain language. There's no README for us. And under the layer of language, there are many other layers like neural networks and visual perceptions and emotions and dopamine and whatever, we don't know. And we cannot compile ourselves either down to some machine code. And probably we'll never will if we believe Alan Turing and Marcel Gottlieb, and we don't know what is it to become a human or. So before talking about the project I presented at README in 2004, let me have a quick words about my Google hacks, because at that time I was hacking Google in all possible ways. And I call that conceptual art without ideas, like the Google AdWords happening about semantic capitalism. And a few months after README, in October 2004, I did the first performance of a human brother, which is a nice oxymoron as well. And it's a comedian here on the top left. He's on the psychoanalytic couch. And he's speaking like a crazy, misaligned, and poorly reinforced ChatGPT. And at that time, it was totally alien, definitely. But today, it's very different. Not only everybody gets it, at once, but lots of people do it, and like Donald Trump, another Pinochenstein, who stole my ideas, obviously, but he's not the only one with a high entropy by far. And so the project I presented at README was called DreamLogs, was inspired by Sigmund Freud, by James Joyce, by it had a dark connection with Sigmund Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, who wrote Propaganda, and also, of course, well, mainly it was in relation with the Oulipo group, especially Georges Perec and Marcel. And the idea is very, very simple. You type a sentence, and the interface shows you its semantic neighborhood. So the set of pages that contain it, and then you pick another expression, and so on, and each pass becomes a transversal dreamlike narrative, which I call the dreamlog. This is Soren Pold who did this dreamlog on the left. And later in 2008, I made a sequel called the Dadameter. It's a large-scale map of language, which was exhibited at the Jeux de Paume in Paris. But it's only 2019 that I realized that what I was exploring at that time, this statistical correlation between words, were very close to what we now call large language models, LLMs, word embeddings, next word predictions, and so on. I just realized that 10 or 20 years after, and here on this map, each pixel represents a statistical correlation between any two words. It's the probability of moving from one concept to another. It's a map of all possible ideal associations. So of course, my attempts were prehistoric and inefficient, but it was hard, so who cares? And now in the age of ChatGPT, when I explain my project, everybody immediately understands. That's crazy, it's almost commonplace. Maybe because, again, we've all become ugly ducklings or beautiful swan, or I don't know, whatever, you tell me. So in 2023, so 2 years ago, I did a residency at the Institute for Advanced Studies in Marseille, and I decided to reactivate the project DreamLogs, which has become kind of up to date, and in the context of a new paradigm at the intersection of AI and neuroscience, trying to explore in more depth the unconscious of capitalism. And these theories are called, well, predictive coding, active inference, free energy principle, free energy landscape. I'm sorry, I cannot explain this in 5 minutes, but basically, one of the ideas is that your brain tries to keep balance between simulation and perceptions. And once your brain has learned, it's been rewired instantaneously if you want, and you cannot learn. That's the basic idea. You don't have to know anything else. And more importantly, I'm now collaborating with AI researchers psychoanalysts and psychiatrists working on psychedelics to explore the topography of dreams, but real dreams this time, not Dreamlog generated dreams, and to explore the landscape of this strange world of fake that governs us. And you can read this story on the website. And that's it. So I really want to thank README for your invitation 21 years ago. I don't know if I thanked you enough, guys, and also for the present invitation. Thank you very much. And that's it. And that's my gift to Copenhagen. Thank you.
So we have Inke.
Yeah. Wonderful. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Inke Arns. I think here in my window it says Hardware Medienkunstverein. That's why I work. I don't know why it keeps appearing again and again. So I was planning to bring my T-shirt, like so many of you did, but I'm in between two places for 20 years, between Berlin and Dortmund. And I was convinced it would be in Berlin. It is not. It is in Dortmund. And now I'm in Berlin. So I still have it. I can confirm. And I'm very proud to wear it. So I was involved in the Software Art Factory in Dortmund in 2005 as one of the co-organizers. And I was a huge fan, of course, of the previous README festivals. For me, really, software art and also net art was really important. And I'm super happy that I could experience it at that time before social media, because it made me understand how important a text is. So, and I remember that I was a really avid critique of Lev Manovich's first publication, The Language of New Media, and I wrote a very long critical reply to his book because he only focused on the surfaces. He only focused on the visual language. And I said, well, there's other languages in new media that I would claim are much more important. But obviously, I think nowadays I would say they are as important. Well, software art, net art, I try to integrate it in my work as a curator, curating exhibitions of contemporary art. I try to always claim, it's contemporary art what I'm showing, but obviously trying to sneak in a lot of net art, a lot of software art, and so on. Together with Jakob Lillemos, I made a big show of Irrational, of the Irrational group. I think it was back in 2006. I remember in this context a big show entitled His Master's Voice, how to do things with words. I think Christophe Bruno, you were involved in this with your Human Browser. I'm a huge fan, still a huge fan of this work. Referring to Olga Gorionova, I actually made an exhibition in 2019 entitled The Alt-Right Complex. Looking at, also inspired, I mean, almost everybody seems to mention Florian Kramer today, being very inspired by one of his lectures, which kind of first introduced me to this online subculture of the alt-right. I'm gonna keep it quite short. What irritates me most nowadays is that most people, also the younger generations, I mean, they grow up with social media, which started in 2005, and for most of them, it's the internet. I mean, I think they rarely mention the word internet. And I find it quite amazing that they have no idea actually that that the internet is much bigger. I wrote a book in 2002 on net cultures. It's in German. So it was written before social media, and so for a long time I thought like, I wrote that book too early. And I thought like, oh, it's funny how soon or how quick, how fast books get. I mean, you can basically throw it away, but nowadays I actually think this is I wrote a lot about projects that were relevant before social media. And that's why I kind of regained a lot of confidence in that book. As I said before, I have been working as the artistic director of HMKV, Hardware Media Art Association, since 2005. And our current show actually has been developed together with the Galerie für zeitgenössische Kunst, Gallery of Contemporary Art in Leipzig, and it's called Robotron. So Robotron was the East German computer producer in the GDR, and currently we have a big show in Leipzig that is going to travel to Dortmund. And in Dortmund, it will have the beautiful subtitle, also Robotron, the beautiful subtitle, Working Class and Intelligentsia, because it's connected to a big socialist realist painting in Leipzig of the same title. So that's it from me. I'm super happy that you organized this online event. I'm super happy to see everybody again, to see like everybody is kind of still standing, almost everybody, not everybody is still alive, but so good to see you. And I'm looking forward to all the other presentations.
Alessandro.
Yes, present. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Just since Olga was the last one, I would like to mention that in Aros was the first time I met. Since Inke was the last one, I wanted to mention that it was the first time in my life I met her. Even know each other by email since quite a while, but that was, and I mean, it was, I would like to stem from it before I show you a few things I have with me. Because I think that I mean, the exceptional 2004 edition of README, I think it was a really seeding a lot, because you were able to gather so many people together, so many interesting people, interesting minds, and giving enough room, even if it was relatively short and overcrowded, to give room to just, I mean, understand, hear from people, look at what they were doing, from the most anarchist experiments to the most to the geekiest artworks, as Christophe was mentioning. So it was really opening a window. I don't want to self-celebrate it too much, but I think that all in all, what was happening, especially in those years and in the few years before, let's say in the 10 years before 2004, has not really yet properly framed. We are talking about, in my very humble and questionable opinion, an avant-garde movement that was dealing with software networks, which nowadays are part of everybody's life, basically. So again, I don't want to over-celebrate it, but I think that there was incredibly inspiring over those days, especially because the structured and still I won't say anarchist, but I mean, there was the conference was very precise and structured, and then we had the Dorkbot, so really extremely short presentations, and then there was the time we spent together for every meal and afterwards. That really made a difference, I would say, and opened a lot of possible ideas. I'm resonating what has been already told. It was super inspiring back then. We were exposed to a lot. On my side, I didn't introduce myself very briefly. I mean, most of you know me, of course, and it's so nice to see many of you after so many years. Alessandro Ludovico, I'm the co-founder of Neural Magazine, which was the main reason also I was invited, and I presented a paper on the structure of sequencer, more the conceptual structure of sequencer. And I had the honor also of write a few texts for the catalog. And speaking of the catalog, a few years later, we started the archive project, and luckily we have all this. This is the very first one in Moscow. This is the catalog of the Helsinki one. This is what you have on the table, the Ares one, and this is the last one in Dortmund, all for the catalogs. They were in a special place, I have to say, in our archive, because I think that the knowledge that has been produced there, it's quite unique, I have to say. On our side, I want to add just one thing, which is that we reviewed the catalog, of course, on Neural, just a few months later with quite enthusiastic tones. So again, I don't want to over-celebrate it, but I do think that it was a crucial moment in I would say in history, for what has been already mentioned, the big wave of internet finally pervading a few sectors of society, and the very critical spirit that we all had back then. It would be nice just to imagine for a second the collaborations that started, that just started in Aarhus over those days, that happened elsewhere. I have a precise memory. I mean, it was important also for me because the hacking monopolism trilogy that I developed later with other artists actually exactly started during the second launch that we had in Aarhus, just throwing ideas, and which then became first project, and then a second, and then a third one in very different settings and characteristics. And I'm sure there have been many other things that somehow have been nurtured, sparkled, produced back then. Very quickly, I wanted also to mention that it was not secondary, that probably one of the very early live coding performances was there as the perfect ending of such an event, which I have fond memories of it, and of many other things of the festival as well. I mean, to end, I just want to add that it was the content, but it was again also the way that we were together over those days that I think was incredibly inspiring. The way we always were dealing with technologies, there was a really shared spirit, which was really intertwining different attitudes, from the classic hacker ones to the do-it-yourself, to the theory to the art practice that in a quite unique way was really, I would say, flying colors, as the British say, over those days. So producing a lot and creating, or better than creating, reinforcing and expanding what was our imaginary back then. How it has impacted my work, I think I already answered that. And again, I think that that impact still resonates nowadays, not by accident. And I'm very thankful for what you have done. We are meeting again somehow, and I can hear the same spirit still resonating. And if we see all of our different practices, I can still find the seeds of what we have somehow experienced back then. That's it. Thank you very much.
Did you hear Saul?
It's me. Hello. Okay. Hello, everybody. Lovely to see you all. What a amazing and strange event to be amongst you all. I wish I was in Aarhus. I was looking at that video. I was so ambivalent about it being on the internet. So thank you very much for uploading that. And I have to say, I think when I reflect about what I was presenting, I think myself, possibly also Anne, I wish she was here, were having some kind of nervous breakdown. I think that's the best description of our activities. We had been inspired by Dave O'Brien, who'd invented this concept of life hacking around that time, to look at to-do lists and deadlines and things like that. But of course, we just didn't make time to actually prepare our presentation properly, which was, you know, the irony wasn't lost. But I think more generally, I mean, cycling out to Aarhus, as I did, and having complicated romantic adventures, I think I was experiencing the sort of breakdown of bohemian lifestyle that I'd created for myself into like the problems of a possibly limitless, self-organized, self-exploitative career. So yeah, Night of the Living Deadline, I think that's pretty much what it meant to me. Looking back at that time, I think it was a scene in the way that I remember scenes being constituted in the 90s and 2000s in London, which is kind of where I learned about scenes and got involved in them through the works of some of those present. And I think at the time, I also sort of transitioned from being very engaged in that to realizing that maybe this was impossible to maintain with this sort of acceleration of mass online culture. And I think I was feeling it quite viscerally. So it influenced my work because I then engaged in a long and very productive process of psychotherapeutic healing, which I recommend to everybody. I certainly enjoyed that and have found it very helpful. And I thought, really looking at what I was doing, I don't know, don't watch the video, but it was very strange. I think I was exposing, I can actually, let me share my desktop so you can just see how completely insane this whole thing was. I was, oh, there we go. I think what I was doing was looking at, oh, where is it? Here we go. Look, I had actually exposed my to-do list to the internet. People could add things to my to-do list. I also had my email somewhere in this video. There's, oh, there I am. Somewhere in this video, it's me with like my email inbox was online. And then I had some sort of register of how many emails I was sending and receiving. And it was a complete mess. So the outcome of this, so how I'm reflecting on this or reinterpreting it to the current situation, I'm hesitant to show this because it is actually genuinely embarrassing. But of course, I made the possibly unwise decision to go into that famously boundaried and casual, carefree existence of academic work. So that's what I do these days. And my to-do lists have just metastasized. And as I said, I'm slightly hesitant to show you. I kind of got very involved in using these self-help books and manuals. They're very interesting. Let's have a look at the house fucking category. That's probably the most insane. My teaching to-do list is probably not the most exciting. But yeah, research is really, really bristling with awfulness. And then I think you'll be pleased to know that somewhere, let's just get rid of house fucking. Here we go. Prepare 5-minute talks. You can see I spent 25 minutes on that. So I also, in sort of to celebrate today, thought I would show you sort of how I've transitioned into academia by trying to be more boundaried about this. I've made a very dorkbotty thing. This is the sort of base plate to my name badge on my door. It won't really make sense until I show you this demo. So I think in the last minute, I'll just show you what this thing actually does. Let me see if I can do that. So let's have a look. Okay, so here's my corridor, the 1970s edifice of the Brockington building in Loughborough. Welcome. It's one of my colleagues' doors. Those are the horrible little windows they installed this year. And here is my door. And as you can see, here is the device that I have created for myself. So if I go into my to-do list and I initiate a task, what you'll see is that it allows me to create a boundary rather than allowing the entire internet to see what my tasks are and hoping that somehow I'm able to manage. What I'm in fact doing is putting a little red light on. Don't know if you can see that coming on. I've tried to zoom in here, but you'll see it will tell people when I'm free. I'll get 25 minutes until that task ends, and at that point they can open my door. They can knock on my door, give me something else to do. So yeah, that's the history. that's where I'm at these days. I probably need some more psychotherapy, but yeah, there we go. Thank you all. It's lovely to see you, and I'm glad I did a little dorkbot thing.
Matthew.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I don't know how to follow that up actually. I think I'll take 25 minutes to lie down and just think about the magnificence of Saul's scheduling. Yeah, I mean, I guess what I wanted to do was think about the ethical stuff that Alessandro has kind of hinted towards already. Thinking about the ethics of the organization, the ethics of the aesthetics that were being posed. You know, the very simple thing that we're following today of a temporal equality, so equal time allotted to all speakers, I think, you know, points towards some of these very, very kind of basic kind of ethical principles. But also looking at the design of the website that's been maintained for so long by Amy and Alex, looking at the different views that runme.org has. So thinking about when the website was designed, how the different kind of epistemic equality were thought about in the design of the website. So for instance, on runme.org, the categories agreed by the reviewing committee, the keyword cloud that would be assigned by people depositing pieces of software out there, but also different views into the content through latest projects, featured projects, things that people are enthusiastic or crazy about or annoyed about, and news. So all of these, in a way that was very kind of typical of the internet at that time after the post.com crash, allowed for different views into the database, different ways of structuring queries and so on, which really, I think, maintains some kind of ethical relationship to the structure of software. But also, there's a strong what I take from that time a lot is an aesthetic egalitarianism. So that is the repository contained art made by artists, non-art made by non-artists that can be read as art, sometimes annoyingly or perplexingly so for the people who made the work, but it also artwork that was not just art, that was to be appreciated or used as software. And there was an understanding of the aesthetic texture of aspects of software culture that were usually taken to be outside the scope of art, and that built on a kind of an ethics of immanence in the work circulated on the web. Most of it wasn't shown in traditional art venues very often, except for Heroic Places, as run by Inka and others. The work circulated on the web. It was available on the covers of software magazines, on floppies, or on CD-ROMs. And it circulated as part of wider cultures of software and the living social relations of the internet as it was emerging at that point. So what it also did was pose a relationship between ethics and aesthetics. So combining the perceptual, social, and technical conditions of the work as the site for these combined ethics and aesthetics. And in doing so, it also engaged differently with software cultures more broadly. So enhancing their possibilities for particular kinds of work and ways of thinking about software, and developed particular kind of attention to particular aspects of software, computing, code, and so on, as aesthetic, as invoking particular kinds of sensing and sensibility. And this, I think, fed into the software culture of the time, proposing ways of testing, prototyping, or putting into place different critical, experimental, or indeed comedic relations to life and computational culture. So I think for all of these things, it had proposed and put in place a very interesting connection between aesthetics and ethics. And thinking about this reminded me of a very interesting quote from Oscar Wilde in The Soul of Man Under Socialism, where he says, "It's not the duty of art to be popular," and I think we can say that software art succeeded in that, "and it is the duty of the public to become artistic." And what software art, I think, does is to make this demand not only to ourselves, not only to a public, but also more demandingly to the public of computers and other machines that we're part of. And I think this very much remains an open task. So thanks.
Yeah, John Leander.
Yes. Yeah, he's here.
Yeah, but did he hear you? You should say again.
Go on, John.
John Leander.
Well. Well,
Joan, can you hear me?
He doesn't recognize it's you saying his name.
Joanne?
Leandra?
Did I pronounce it wrong?
I don't know.
It's a bit like...
Hi. Hello?
Hello?
Okay, you can hear me now. Well, I mean, I have been since, well, the fact I have to say that I remember a lot the first, before Argos, before Denmark, I remember a lot the first, well, the first README in Moscow, no? I remember when I met with Alexei and Olga in Transmediale. That was a moment I was presenting these computer game modifications back in 2000, I think it was in 2001. And I remember very well this moment when we met after my presentation, and Olga and Alexei invited me to take part in Moscow. Then, after all that is being said, of course, I remember the situation in Denmark that I think Ludovico described very well. There was a huge amount of people. There was this sense of, there was somehow a sense of community that, from the perspective of today, I think, what is it now? No? I think one of the keys today is precisely to try to understand where this sense of community might be today, you know, because we have to assume that this is somewhere, no, and it has the same strength that it had back in the days in README in Denmark, no, and I don't know. I think a lot about this sense of transparency, no, and the sense of adventure, no, also of going into something that was not somehow under tags and inside a catalog, something that was still unknown. No, there was still this feeling. No, maybe perhaps probably it's because everything was happening in both cases in Russia and also in Denmark. It was happening before the momentum of the social networks, no? And in any case, I don't think I can add a lot of, I think you guys said most of what I could say, but for sure I would add this, no, that I think nowadays it's very important to remember this kind of situation, no? That was happening there, no, and try to find out where is today, no, because obviously we are talking about variables that go beyond, no, what we were trying to do these days, no, which is basically experimenting, everybody in different directions with different attitudes, experimenting with what you could do with the machine. No, nowadays this has become something really difficult to manage. No, and my personal experience, I went ahead from all these context of software and what I was doing these days. I tried to really, in a way, to widen my experience also beyond this context, no? So I don't know. Basically, I think this is what I can say. It was very surprising for me to receive this invitation from Olga, because literally I didn't meet with any one of those, except I think we met one with Ludovico, with Alessandro, here in Wrocław, and that's it. No one else. No? So when it comes to me, thanks for the invitation, and thank you.
Am I next? I'm curious. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hello. I'm Anina. Thank you, Juan. I would like to share my screen, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, here we go. All right. Actually, I need to stop it again because I need to make sure I share with sound and optimize for video sharing. Okay, here we go. Hi, I'm Anina. I also still have that t-shirt, and happy anniversary, everyone. I'm also still doing strange things with software and hardware. And the software movement, software art movement, was really a place where I found my home and a community as a young artist doing weird things with software and the internet. And what was really attractive to me about the software art movement was that it was a very inclusive movement in terms of the types of art that software art counted as software art, and that was really attractive to me. Also, the lightheartedness of it. So it's kind of like finding humor in everyday sort of banal software experiences. The project that I showed in Aarhus was this project. This shows me when I was a lot younger. Yeah, it was this project. So that's what I was doing at the README Dorkbot City Camp. There's no video of me in the archive, probably because I was walking around outside. I brought this this project that was portable. That was like a laptop that you could carry around. They used GPS for a location. At the time, this device, the small GPS receiver you see on the laptop case, cost like 60 Swiss francs. I could not afford a smartphone, and I think most people couldn't. They kind of existed, but nobody could afford them. So yes, so I hooked up this GPS device, carried it around in my laptop bag, and I was mapping surveillance cameras, and I created this software where you could like walk around and hear in your headphones the surveillance camera presences. And so I actually still have a video. It's not from Aarhus, it's from another, and I'm trying to play it. And this is what it sounded. This is me when I was a baby. And yeah, so this is what it sounded like. It's a very short video. I made the sound in PD. I couldn't really do PD, still can't. So yes, so you could use the mouse to annotate the camera map. So I'm still making strange art, and including this project. It's called A Piece of the Pie Chart. It puts pie charts on actual edible pies and to show gender ratios in art and tech events, venues, etc. The pies represent how much of a slice of the pie women in these spaces can claim for themselves. People can either send them to the place where the data originated or take them to their own workplace to discuss over coffee the plight of women. Last but not least, actually, so recently I've also been what I would call more classical software art. This is Pac-Mom, a feminist parody of Pac-Man, the game from the 1980s. So I've been making more like neoclassicist software art, I guess. It's a parody of software. So it's a parody of the Pac-Man game, except that due to the gender wage gap and other systemic factors, Pac-Mom has to work more and longer for the same amount of food dots as Pac-Man. And the world is generally not kind to her. And yes, and so that's what I've been doing. So instead of looking back to the software past with nostalgia, I'm kind of looking at it through a feminist lens, also through a self-help feminist lens. And yeah, so instead of with rose-colored glasses. All right, so I think I'm optimistic about software, and I'm also optimistic that I'll see all of you at the 40th anniversary. So thank you.
All right, is it me next?
Yes.
All right. Hi, everybody. Great to see you. And I'm sorry I don't have I do still have the t-shirt, but I am away from home now. So unfortunately don't have it with me. So reflecting back on the Run Me, Read Me, Dorkbot camp thing, I think the big thing that resonates for me is back in the day how we understood back then and talked about code and algorithms as subjective and political and things that had authorship. And at the time, the public kind of thought that we were crazy, geeky nerds. I think that was a time when people largely believed that those were neutral, but it kind of turns out that it seems like we were right. But we also talked about the power of poetry, of software art to address these topics with poetry, ambiguity, and even messiness, rather than with hammers and misplaced faith and expectations of precision and neutrality. And I think we understood that artists and other lay people could take algorithms and do what we wanted with them, rather than be victims with them. So I think that thinking, serves us well, just kind of as a collective mindset, not as anything particular of the city camp itself, because I don't want to be too self-congratulatory since I was an organizer of it. But in terms of projects, I did a couple projects at the city camp, and the one I'd like to kind of reflect on was the Everybody VJ project, which was a hyper collective performance of people performing VJ instruments, which is something that doesn't normally lend itself to collective work, collective VJing instead of musical ensembles. Collective visual projection is difficult. It seems to resist collective action since projecting everything together risks washing everybody and everything out and neutralizing everybody. So the performance of these different visual tools and expressions by people from different countries, different situations, different experiences, and somehow pulling this thing together like a puzzle, no matter how awkwardly and imperfectly, just because that was the point, I think was an interesting exercise. And Alessandro and Johan have already reflected on the importance of this community that existed, that we had. And I think it's interesting to think about, like, how does all of this apply to today? Several of you have already mentioned, as we talk about contemporary topics relating to algorithms and AI, often if it seems very familiar, I feel like I'm having a déjà vu of a conversation I had 20 years ago with people. We're talking about subjectivity of algorithms in AI. We're talking about authorship. In particular, 10 years ago, suddenly everyone was thinking about the authorship and subjectivity of social media algorithms, and still are. And suddenly in the last 10 years, everyone understands this. And it's really weird because it used to seem to just be, a few of us. So all of these questions, authorship, subjectivity, it's all becoming very familiar turf. My current work, well, I did a piece a few years ago dealing with social media algorithms, and I'm currently working on reauthoring an AI chatbot, considering it already has some authorship. And I reauthor them as VJ instruments, but also in general. I'm currently working on one that is, in fact, intentionally struggling to grapple with some of the contemporary issues that Olga was discussing, forcing a chatbot to kind of look through theoretical lenses at contemporary problems and watch it kind of struggle to deal with that. But I think AI is in now many ways what software and algorithms and the internet were 20 to 30 years ago in terms of this feeling of powerlessness, like people feel like, oh gosh, we're the victim of all of these systems foisted on us by these big corporations. But at the same time, there are these opportunities for creativity. We're seeing the early adopters, very much like the internet, are corporations, military, utilitarian purposes, plagiarism, and of course, porn. Remember that when porn was like the big customer of the internet? Now it's very deja vu. And I also find myself giving talks. I was just at a talk, part of a panel a few weeks ago of AI artists, and we went through the same prep of, okay, here's how the audience is going to heckle you and say that you don't have any authorship and so on. And here's how we'll prepare. It reminds me very much of the live coding panels that we used to do in the early 2000s, and the software art panels. So I think the kind of conversations that we were having at the city camp, but just in general as a community 20 years ago, have really hopefully prepared us well for this moment, that we're between the cracks of all that's going on in corporate production, or the places artists can deconstruct algorithms, author them, reauthor them, and redeploy the messiness as we move forward to the next thing. So thanks everybody for having me and for being here, and hope to see you more in the next 20 years.
Casey Reese is not around.
Am I up next then if Casey's not here?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. I love that I get to go after Amy, because when I was at this, I was a grad student of Amy's, and that's how I ended up there, is that Amy was like, hey, you guys should apply to this thing. And I think for me, when I look back at like that time, watching that video of me, I was like, oh my God, I am so young and so naive, and I had no idea what I was doing. But I also reflect back that and I'm a professor now, right? And so there was this way that I was reflecting back on it, is like Amy was kind of shepherding her grad students to be like, come, this is how you do this academic thing. Like, come to this conference and meet these people and have these discussions. And so for me, a lot of my reflection was not necessarily about the content, but just about the way that I was like learning how to be in this space, and how I think about that now as a professor, and kind of being in weird spaces and kind of identifying students that I'm like, hey, you should come be a part of this conversation now. So yeah, I just say that, and I'm honored to go after Amy. When I look back at those videos, I have this moment of like, did we know we were being recorded? Did we have any idea that like 20 years later we would end up on YouTube and like reconnect with Zoom? Like, it's this very weird, like, time warpy thing of like, I had no idea. I was just like, I'm here and we're talking about things. So that just makes me also kind of think about, there's bazillions of ways that all of us are being recorded and watched unknowingly each day, and like, where does that end up, and how do we like work in this space? I presented about children's board games and the relationship of children's board games to algorithms and knitting patterns and algorithms. And at the time, I was very interested in how do we represent intangible things? How do we represent things that we can't see anymore? And when I look back at that, there's part of me that's like, I don't really work in this space at all anymore. And at the same time, I'm like, actually, I work in a lot of the same ways. I pivoted a lot to now I work a lot more in design and sustainability. And a lot of my work maybe isn't directly about software, but it's like, how do we see the unseen effects of climate change? How do we understand the things around climate change that we can't necessarily see and hold and touch in a physical way? And how do we get people to interact with that? So in a way, it's very connected. I also have children now who have played a lot of board games, and I look at these board games and playing with them and like think about them as algorithms and these other things. Um, what do I think about that time today? I remember being very upset when George Bush was elected. And now obviously that kind of seems sweet and quaint when we thought that was bad, right? Other things that I think about is a lot of what I was talking about at the time was how do we interact with technology? Like how do our bodies move in relationship to computers? I had knit a sweater for my computer in this kind of way of like, if we make things that are cozy for us, why don't we make things that are cozy for our machines? The sweater for a computer was this like weird idea that like when I watched the video, I was like, I showed in like just the idea of it, and it was something I went on to make. And that was something that lived on in a very weird way. I was actually contacted by talk shows who thought it was a product that was I was selling, and I was like, no, it was like a weird art piece, you know, like so that was kind of like a weird thing that lived on in a different way. But when I think about, you know, at the time I was like, what are the ergonomics of how we interact with a computer and with these machines? And now, of course, you know, everybody has, you know, wireless AirPods, and, you know, we have these phones. And I live in the Bay Area where I ride BART, and, you know, everybody's just like on their devices on the trains, right? And so I think our bodies are still interacting with machines just in a different way. Obviously, we have social media, we have advertising that we're like even more connected to in a lot of these different ways. And so I think about these ideas still today, just in a very different way. And then the other thing I'll just kind of like end with is, so I'm a professor now, and I oftentimes give my students the assignment to think into the future. And actually right now, some of my students in Design for the Climate Crisis are trying to imagine the world in 50 years. And going back and watching a video of me 20 years ago, I'm like, oh my God, how is it that I'm asking my students to imagine the world 50 years from now? Because I think about, you know, 20 years ago, we thought we had all these great tools, and yet like we didn't have half the stuff that exists now. Not that I'm necessarily saying we have great tools now, but it was, I don't know, like we didn't envision any of this, or I mean, we did, but we didn't, right? So it's just interesting to kind of be in this time space again. And I was really excited to get this invitation. I do not have the t-shirt, but I actually have the poster in my office that I'm not in right now. And it has so many little tiny rips in it because I had moved so many different times and like re-hung it up so many different times. So I don't know, after this, maybe I'll have to just like go frame it and like have a better way of moving it around. So thanks, everyone.
Next is Joan Sattrom.
Is it me next? I believe. I can totally relate to the tattered corners on the poster. I have the same situation of having moved it around. I'm currently in my office wearing the t-shirt, but my poster is at home. Yeah, I'm just like really excited to reconnect with folks and see folks. README really stuck with me, and that's kind of what I wanted to reflect on a little bit. I was a part of Critical Artware, consisting of myself, John Cates, and Ben Syverson. And we were a collaboration that was interested in connecting the artistic movements of video tool builders from the 1960s and 70s to the artware and net art makers around the turn of the century. So README was an amazing place for us to do research and talk to folks and interview folks. So we interviewed a number of you guys, and some of the edits are floating around the web, and some are in hard drives, some are, on old laptops. So, there's some organization that we need to do, but I'd love to figure out how to complement the archival work that's going on. So I will be in touch about that and talk to my friends about gathering some of that stuff. But more than the artifacts in the media, I wanted to kind of talk about the raw meat computation and human interaction and community that I witnessed at README, and how it like has affected my work for the last 20 years. I was so happy to have double-clicked on the installer of README. README installed so much inspiration into my personal OS, and it echoed through my practice for so many years in so many ways. There are too many stories to tell and like weird rabbit holes that we could go down, but I wanted to wrangle a few things, and it's around the ethos that I witnessed and tried to reflect continually. Of the three things of wild experimentation, radical openness and inclusion, and creative misuse. I've emulated and remixed my README experience in many ways over the years, and in my organizing in 2010 through 2012, I was working on the gli.tc/h conference festival gathering that was like really modeled in a lot of ways after what was done at README. It was a collaborative effort. It was, both festival, both conference, kind of refusing to fit into a box, and focusing around glitch art and creative misuse. In fact, Amy, when you were mentioning the Everybody VJ, I remember reaching out to you at one point being like, hey, can we use this? Can we use this format as a part of gli.tc/h? So there were literal aspects of README that lived on in some of the organizing that I've done. And then as far as my personal work, I do a lot of stuff with the desktop. So, being introduced and being able to experiment with Victor and Alexi's WIMP tool, and later Jody.org stuff, like had really became inspirational for the work that I was doing, as well as like being introduced to TopLab. And the work being done there. And it's been amazing to continue to watch that scene grow. I was able to be in Berlin a couple years ago and do a Share My Screens or Share Your Screen event. So it's still, very relevant in the things that I'm experimenting with. I'm pretty terrible at keeping in contact with folks, and I suck at social media. But I really do appreciate the opportunities and the folks that have advocated for my work over the years. And being able to have the opportunity to be involved in Transmediale in 2012, where I remember seeing Matthew Fuller after the performance, and Matthew, you were like, "Hey, nice job," and that fueled me for quite a long time. And then also, Olga, including me and Ben in the Funware exhibition, which was in Eindhoven, was an amazing experience, and kind of one of those outsider just experiences of having work alongside folks that you just admire so much. I guess I'm just saying that I'm just continue to be a fanboy of everyone here, and I think things that I'm thinking about now. I mean, a lot of my work has been around like parroting software and playing with glitch and disruption. And I think it's an interesting moment where that's like wrapping around on itself when disruption has become norm or become a tool to deploy upon others, and also like a business method. So I'm interested in these codifications that are kind of happening, and that takes me back to those ethos that I referenced at the beginning, but like the ethos of creative misuse, particularly because once something's in a box, you can always break that box. And so now I find myself trying to create contexts for experimentation, and teaching others how to consider creative misuse in their own practice or thought process. So I run a nonprofit called Netizen.org, where we are trying to, the tagline is like restoring human agency on the web through creative code and software art initiatives. We have been trying to get an artware residency off the ground here in Chicago. And want to do more instances where we're supporting people that are making the work and creating opportunities to connect people. Some in the ethos of critical artware, right? Like there's a lot of video art tool builders in Chicago that would like to connect with other software art folks. And then I'm also teaching at the University of Chicago over the last 6 years. We've been building out a media art and design program where we are embedding a lot of these ethos of creative misuse directly into the program, experimentation that I've been doing for many years, but was directly connected to all of your work and in particular the README moment. So I think it's like these ways of operating are just as important as they are 20 years ago, especially as our tools and freedoms become restricted and more codified. Non-normative use and non-normative existence is important to teach and share and champion.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, what should I say? We've come to the end, and well, I'm just trying to make my machine work. And where's that? Sorry?
Completely to the
Not completely, no. But where is this? Where? Okay, here it is. The last speaker is not here. It's Guripal. And when we hired Guripal to do the final concert, I guess you all remember he came up with his mechanical bird. And here we're gonna listen to the first 5 minutes of an art radio piece like they do it in Europe. It's called, and I think I need to share screen or otherwise. Oh, Christ, where's Zoom now? Zoom. Okay, yeah, back to meeting. That's it. So, share. Then what? Did I share sound? Who knows? I probably did. Let me know if you can't hear.
Hallo, dit is Dr. Klangendoem op de Concertzender. Het is jouw favoriete programma over geluidskunst, radiokunst en al wat meer. Samenstelling, Houker en...
Nu skal du høre Lærklokken med Guripal, og det er med
Guripal.
Hallo, hier ist Gogo aus Österreich und ihr hört das fantastische Lærklokken mit Guripal.
Okay. So a lot of people ask me all the time, Guripal, are you a good watchmaker or horologist? That's a very good question. I can only say that I started doing horology as a sort of anti-depression idea, kind of doing what I used to do when I was young. I was interested in mechanics, so I started to do things which dealt with taking things apart and building things together again that worked. Later on in the art world and music world, we got words for this. Some people called it decomposing. Some people called it stutter. Some people called it moldy, deranged, glitchy, wrong with a U, wrong, skippy, skipping, out of control, etc., etc., etc. My clockmaking is decorative, but it's also real horology because I work with a team. of very, very skilled horologists like Karl Oppermann, etc., etc. And together, we create very, very sophisticated timepieces. Now, a lot of people question if you should make your own timepieces from scratch. That is certainly an approach. That is certainly one approach that you can have. And it's a beautiful approach. It just takes a lot of time. And the only reward you get is that you will be seen as somebody who can do everything from scratch. But not everyone is good at everything. Most people are not. Actually, very, 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 very... I just have to wind this watch up. Hold on. Most people are not good at everything. I would say that very, very few people are good at just a few things. So I would say if you live in Europe, it's the same with bikes in Copenhagen. There's a million bikes lying around. There's a million bikes lying around. There's more bikes in Copenhagen than there's people. It makes no sense for you to start building a bike from scratch. You'll have much more fun going into the streets of Copenhagen, find a bike that nobody uses anymore and start to build on it. But of course, the quality will not be as good as something you build from scratch. You have to be selective. Maybe you have to team up with somebody that built something from scratch. Or modify something that was really good to begin with and bring it into something. I don't know, it's different approaches. My watchmaking approach is that I like everything about watchmaking, and my horologistical approach is that I like everything dealing with horology. One day I might put together a team and we'll do something all the way from scratch. Maybe I will always just rebuild and refix and gild things. Don't gild the lily, but I will gild everything else. Maybe I will even gild the lily in order to make something shine. I've been lucky that the things I work with is, well, it's a communal thing when I work with watches and clocks. I like to fix things. A lot of people complain and say, like mechanical watchmaking is only for rich people. Well, think about how much money you spend on an iPhone. Every year people buy, like, for example, an iPhone. And by buying an iPhone, they will be like, they spend but the iPhone will only last them a year or a year and a half, and then they'll throw it away. A mechanical watch of the qualities that I'm interested in and making will last you a lifetime. You could call what I'm doing decomposing watches. You could call it that I'm stuttering watches. But mainly it's made as a horologistical way of staying away from suicide and being antidepressive, really.
Yeah, it's a good. That was a good place to end. And we are ending. It's almost 6 o'clock here. Any famous last words? Thanks a lot for coming, everybody. Yeah, it was amazing. And everything, wow, we even have, yeah, it's beautiful. We've we've recorded it. Can't I do stuff like that? Play chime for raised hands. That's too boring. Okay. Thanks a lot for hanging out with us and each other. And we'll do it again in 20 years, or maybe 19 years and 2 months. Yeah. Yeah. Bye.